I think that there's a distinction to be made between what is officially the faith that is prayed at Mass and what is the faith that is demonstrated in, say, a typical Novus Ordo.
I'm talking about Vatican II documents and the dogmas and teachings of Vatican II. Regardless of what you believe when you walk into a Novus Ordo or an SSPX Mass, do you as a Roman Catholic have to believe Vatican II?
I don't know what that would even mean, believe Vatican II. It wasn't a dogmatic council.
It is a dogmatic council. No, that's totally false.
That.
No, it's not. What Paul VI said was it, quote, proclaimed no new dogmas. There's 4 separate statements from the popes that say it is dogmatic. So it's a total trad myth. It's a trad myth. Yes, it is. Do you want me to give you the 4 statements from the Vatican that you have to believe it?
Sure. But they state that it's I don't even, what I'm saying is I don't know what that would mean. It's an ecumenical council is what they state.
Yeah, and you have to believe an ecumenical council. You think that when the Pope confirms an ecumenical council for the entire church on faith and morals, you don't have to believe it? All Paul VI said was that it proclaimed no new dogmas. He never said it's not dogmatic. And in fact, Francis and every Roman Catholic, why are you interrupting? Every Roman Catholic after the council, every Pope has enforced Vatican II and the new Mass on the entire church. So the idea that you don't have to believe it is ludicrous. Every Roman Catholic church that you go to tells you and teaches you in the catechism that you must accept the documents of Vatican II.
What must I accept from the documents?
All of the teaching, all the documents of Vatican II are signed off by the papacy.
What specifically do I as a lay person?
All of them, the entirety of it. You don't get to reject any of it because it's ordinary universal teaching.
What new doctrine was brought in Vatican II?
Well, Paul VI claims there was no new doctrines. I don't believe that. I believe that Vatican II with Nostra Aetate, for example, taught that Hindus now worship the one true God, as do Muslims. Do you believe that Muslims and Hindus worship the same God as Roman Catholics?
I think that can be scrutinized a bit further than the way you just stated it.
Well, do they believe in the Trinity? I mean, because that's the only one true God that exists.
Right. Well, so I think this is, I do have an issue with that, and I've studied this problem, and I see the same issue that you see.
Because it's not true. That's because you have some discernment. You're correct. It's not true. Muslims and Catholics and Orthodox do not worship the same God because they use the word God. And in fact, Vatican Nostra Aetate goes as far as to say that Muslims and Catholics have the same faith as Abraham. And yet Jesus says in John 5 that Abraham rejoiced to see his day and saw it and was glad. Excuse me, John 8. John 5 through 8, Jesus constantly argues with the Pharisees that Abraham believed in him. Well, then Muslims are not of the Abrahamic faith.
Sure. So,
if that's then Vatican II is false. If you say sure, then Vatican II is false because it says the opposite of that.
I grasp what you're saying, and I've wrestled with the same problem.
Right, well, this is an example of why Rome is a contradictory position.
If I could, I just want to explain how I read what is in Vatican II there. It's, I will say that this is what is called weaponized ambiguity, and I think that there is a huge problem.
I know,
with the
man. I've heard all this since 2005 when I was going to the Latin Mass in 2005, and I've heard about weaponized ambiguity. Do you think it's ambiguous when the Pope goes into the mosque and prays towards Mecca? Is that ambiguous, or is he acting out this theology?
Yeah, that's wackiness, and I'm with you on that. But
then Vatican I is false, and the Roman See has defected.
I don't think that's the case.
How are you keeping the true faith if you're praying in mosque towards Mecca?
I mean, I don't think you would. You certainly are committing at least heresy, if not apostasy.
Okay, so then Vatican I's not true, and Rome can err, and the papacy is not indefectible.
I don't think that that's necessarily true.
I mean, you just literally said that you think it's heretical. Francis and Benedict did it.
Mm-hmm.
So, are they heretics who defected or not?
I can answer that, but I wanted to address the bit about Vatican II that you were saying.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I have no problem going through methodically on this, but I don't want to go all over the place and lose where we were.
Okay, can I read the paragraph? It says, the church regards with esteem the Muslims. Muslims adore the one God, living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, creator of heaven and earth, who has spoken to men. Muslims take pains to submit wholeheartedly to his decrees, just like Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself submitted to God. Though they do not acknowledge Jesus as God, they honor him as a prophet. And then it goes on to say, they value the moral life and the worship of God through prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. This gives the impression that we have the same common faith and that God accepts Islamic prayer, almsgiving, and fasting. And none of that's true.
So, yeah, I mean, that's there's a lot of problems in that statement. But I think that it's important to look at the specific wording. Like I don't have it in front of me, but I could get it in front of me. They said that they claim to have Abrahamic faith, or what was that bit?
No, it actually says that they adore the one God living and subsisting in himself. It doesn't say they claim to, it says they do it.
Well, so let me just explain how I read that, and it's not may or may not be what was intended in the words, and I certainly think that the way it's worded is highly problematic. Okay,
well, I thought that the papacy was here to give us clarity, certitude, and to guide us and preserve it. So now it's weaponized ambiguity?
Vatican II definitely did not do that.
Okay, well, then the papacy doesn't work, because...
I don't think that has to be true. But the way that I read that...
So we need you. I'm not trying to be rude, but do you want to see how Protestant this is? We actually need you, an individual Catholic, to suss through all these stacks of papal documents to tell us the true papal meaning of the true papal councils?
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Well, but you are, because you're saying that the way to read it is blah, 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 blah.
No, I'm saying that each individual has to apply critical thinking when they analyze anything.
Does Vatican I say that you judge the first see and apply critical thinking to its teachings? Or does it say you submit with docility to whatever it teaches?
You're not supposed to violate your conscience. So
it's not an issue of conscience, because it also says that you submit with docility. That's the teaching of Vatican I, is that the laity do not judge the first see. You submit with docility to its rulings and teachings.
That's true.
Then you're not in a position to say that this is weaponized ambiguity.
I think we're getting too scattered. And
this is precisely the issue. It's not. It's precisely the issue.
Well, it's just I want to be able to address that one statement that you read from Vatican II. I'm perfectly fine to move on to the other points, but the way I grasp what is said there in Vatican II, which admittedly it sucks, the way it's worded.
These are dogmatic statements, and you're saying it sucks. So this is like saying that divine revelation sucks.
They're not dogmatic statements.
They are dogmatic statements. I'll give you 4 examples of the Pope saying that you have to accept all the documents of Vatican II.
There's nothing for me to accept there. That's
just that you're lying to yourself, because you are told in other places 4 times that you must accept all of Vatican II.
And that means nothing. That they can keep repeating that, but
you don't actually follow the papacy. Reality. So thank you for admitting my point that you interpret and follow the papacy when you want to.
No,
you literally just said you don't have to accept Vatican II's dogmatic, even though the Pope tells you have to.
No, again, we're jumping to another point. I just wanted to address
because you're saying that a dogmatic teaching is sucky, and I'm telling you that you don't get to say that in the Roman Catholic system, and it is dogmatic.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. If I give you 4 places where the Pope says you have to accept Vatican II, you're telling me that you don't have to listen to that.
Accept Vatican II has to mean something in practical reality.
It means you must believe. Why are you lying to yourself and lying to the audience? Because I can open up the Roman Catholic Catechism cites from Vatican II countless times, And you're telling me that Rome doesn't teach that?
An infallible document.
It's absolutely authoritative and binding. It doesn't have to be infallible.
No, the catechism is not.
Yes, it is binding. It is ordinary teaching. Do you know what ordinary teaching is? You didn't even know there was two different creeds in the church. Do you know what ordinary teaching is?
What do you mean two different creeds? The Nicene and Apostles' Creed? Is that what you're saying?
No, earlier, the two different creeds between the West and the East, the Uniates and the Latin Church.
I'm aware of that.
Okay, so what do you know what ordinary teaching is?
Yeah, the ordinary magisterium.
Right. Do you have to accept that, according to Vatican I? No, there's no if.
Yes,
do you have to accept it?
Yes, you do.
Okay. What's the criteria for ordinary? Right. What's the criteria for it?
I mean, I can't spit it out at the moment.
It's any time that the Pope is teaching authoritatively in concert with what the Church has always taught for the entire Church. You have to accept that, and it's free from error. It is also, according to Vatican I, under the Petrine Charism. Vatican II's documents, listen, Vatican II's documents are affirmed by the Roman See for the entire Church on faith and morals. You are told in every Catholic church in the world that you have to accept it. So you do not have the liberty of rejecting Vatican II. It's false.
All right, here's the issue. What you just said, it can't contradict itself.
Only if Roman Catholicism is true. I'm arguing that it does contradict. That's the whole point of why we're having this conversation.
No, but what I'm saying is that if there is a contradiction, which you're highlighting, and I'm with you on that, then that's the problem.
And it means the Roman system is false. It means the system is false. That's the point.
I don't think that's
I'm sorry
true,
that you don't see that, because it's a systemic level refutation.
I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that you've heard my case on that. And I'm just trying to.
Your case was the wording is sucky, which I've heard for 20 years.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to parse out these two issues. I'm perfectly fine to have the conversation that you're trying to have right now, but we have not addressed that statement from that, or I haven't been able to address that statement. So, the way I read that is replace Muslim with unbaptized individual. Can an unbaptized individual pray?
None of that has anything to do with the fact that it's trying to say they have the faith of Abraham. That's the problem in the statement. The faith of Abraham was faith in Christ.
Is a single Muslim representative of the entirety of Islam, the religion?
I don't see how that's relevant, because Islam as a universal position rejects the Trinity and the deity of Christ. So it doesn't matter what one Muslim thinks or believes when the public profession of the religion is that they are Unitarians and they reject the Trinity. In fact, they believe in putting to death people who believe in the Trinity.
But this is what I'm trying to say. If an atheist is unbaptized and prays, is that somehow invalid? Can an atheist not pray?
Praying, and none of that has anything to do with the public profession of their faith. What the theology is, the public profession of the religion. It's not saying can God choose to listen to an individual when they pray. It's saying that Muslims have the same God as us, and it's just categorically false. They don't.
I totally see where you're coming from, but I think there's a discontinuity in how you're reading it and how I'm reading it. I'm reading it from the perspective of they shouldn't. And
all of this begs the question. That's the whole point, man. Like I give up, because I'm going to give you right here. It's actually 5 places that tell you that you have to believe in Vatican II. All of these are right here underneath I did a video called "Was Vatican II Infallible?" If you look up this video, I list 5 papal documents underneath that tell you that you have to believe Vatican II. So look, I appreciate you coming on, Ryan. It was good to chat with you. I wish you well. I just don't buy it, man. And if you want to reject Vatican II, go for it. But it's not a consistent Roman Catholic position to reject something that 5 papal documents tell you have to accept. And here they are. The first one is right here. It's Francis talking about the dogmatic nature of the reforms of Vatican II. It's his audience that he gave in 2017. There's the first one. Second one is another speech. This one is John the 23rd's opening speech to the Vatican II, and he says it is an ecumenical council that is dogmatic and must be accepted. The third one is this one, which you have to hit translate into English. It's only in Italian. It is a discussion from Paul VI, I believe, 1976, where Paul VI says that you have to believe it. It's dogmatic. It's just a trad myth. This is like they're inventing ways to try to make the system work when all you have to do is demonstrate one dogmatic contradiction and the whole system is false. And it's like Roman Catholics can't conceive of that being a systemic level defeater, because in their mind you can just keep stacking up more explanations and more quote evidences. So Pius XI, Casti Connubii, paragraph 104, this says that you're bound by more than what is even extraordinary. You have to believe in whatever the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman See teaches, even if it's ordinary teaching and not ordinary magisterium. Even just the ordinary teaching is supposed to be submitted to with docility. And the last one is Si Diligus of Pius XII. Obedience is necessary even if you think the Pope is wrong. Do you see this? All you goofball Roman Catholics. Si Diligus. Pius X's canonization by Pius XII. Even if you think the Pope is wrong, you still must submit with docility. That is what Roman Catholic Vatican I obedience had in mind. So, there's the 5 things that prove you don't get to pick and choose and throw out Vatican II. And you notice he did 2 things there in that discussion. At first he says, no, I don't have to accept Vatican II. No, actually you do. Here's 5 examples of where you have to. Oh, well, it's the wording. No, which one is it? Do you not have to accept it, or is it just shitty wording? And by the way, the Roman See is supposed to be there to make it clear and not put us in this Protestant position of, we don't know what it means, it's ambiguous, it's shitty wording. So everybody should go watch this podcast from 2020 where we walk through all of these different documents.